Imagine sitting in a dark, really sweltering underground prison cell.
Right.
And the occupying military tells you a doctor is coming to give you medicine for a slight cold.
Which is obviously suspicious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know instantly it's a lie. You know it's going to be a lethal injection. So, what do you do?
Yeah. Do you panic?
Right. Do you beg for your life? Do you finally renounce the beliefs that landed you in this cell in the first place? Well, if you are a man named Peter Tarot, you do none of those things. You simply wash your face, put on some clean clothes, and you wait.
It's an almost terrifying level of peace, you know?
Yeah, it really is.
Because when the pressure is absolute and the stakes are quite literally life and death, you finally see the true architecture of a person's character. And in this case, the foundation was entirely unbreakable.
Welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. We're so glad you're joining us today.
So glad to have you.
Our mission today is to unpack the life, the legacy, and the recent canonization of St. Peter Tarot.
He is actually Papua New Guinea's very first indigenous saint.
Right, canonized in October 2025 by Pope Leo XIV. And we've got a massive stack of historical archives, eyewitness accounts, and modern coverage to go through.
We really do. And the core mission of this deep dive is to understand the mechanics of that courage. I mean, how does an ordinary guy, a husband, a father, a guy from a remote village, end up standing face to face with an occupying empire?
It's wild.
It is. He stood up to defend the sanctity of marriage and his faith, and, well, he paid for it with his life.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the very beginning, in a village called Rakunai.
So Rakunai is located on the Gazelle Peninsula, which is on the island of New Britain in Papua New Guinea.
Okay.
The name itself actually translates to the field of grass.
Hmm.
And back in the early 1900s, it was this really prosperous area. It was known for its fertile volcanic soil and copper plantations.
Nice.
Yeah, and Peter was born right there in 1912 into the Tolai people.
And his name, Peter Tarot, actually tells us a lot about his culture right out of the gate, doesn't it?
It really does, yeah.
Yeah.
In Tolai culture, the prefix tu signifies a boy child.
Oh, gotcha.
But Aya signifies a girl. And traditionally, you didn't just, inherit a family name from your parents. A child's name was given by their maternal uncles.
Wow, so the extended family is super involved from day one.
Exactly. It highlights how deeply interconnected the family structure was. His parents were Angelo Tapuya and Maria Iyatamul.
Okay.
And this is a really critical detail here. His father, Angelo, was a wealthy and highly respected tribal chief. But both of his parents were first-generation Catholic converts.
I want to pause on that because, to me, that's a huge shift.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's easy to assume a saint was just, I don't know, born glowing with holiness.
Right, the perfect little angel.
Yeah. But how does a kid whose parents literally just converted from a culture with a recent history of tribal warfare and cannibalism suddenly become the most devout kid in the village? That is a massive generational leap.
It is a massive leap.
Yeah.
And what's wonderful about the historical accounts is that they really don't try to paint him as this flawless, ready-made saint from birth.
That's refreshing.
Yeah, he was a completely normal, mischievous kid. His father loved him, but had to discipline him pretty regularly.
Naturally.
There's actually a great memory from one of his classmates who recalled their parish priest, Father Emil Jacobi, actually boxing Peter's ears in class because he was acting up.
Huh. You don't usually see that on a saint's trading card.
No, you really don't. Another time during a writing lesson, Peter got caught writing a childish love letter on his slate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, his sister saw it and immediately tattled on him to their parents. So he was out there playing rough games, getting into trouble, just being a normal boy.
But even with all the roughhousing, there's a distinct moral compass starting to form pretty early on, right?
Definitely.
Because his peers remembered that if those games started to get out of hand, or if the mischief crossed a line into actual cruelty, Peter wouldn't throw a tantrum or anything.
No, he'd just leave.
Right, he would just quietly take a stand on principle and walk away.
And that quiet, intrinsic motivation really solidified as he got older. There's this pivotal moment in his teenage years.
What happens?
He actually asked his father for permission to move out of their comfortable, wealthy family home to live with relatives.
Just randomly.
Well, his only reason was that his relatives lived much closer to the church.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he wanted to be an altar server for the early morning daily mass, and he just wanted to make sure he was never late.
So he wasn't being dragged to church by his parents. He was seeking it out entirely on his own.
Right, and that drive led him to the Catechist Training College in Taligep. So by 1933, at just 21 years old, he became the youngest catechist in his village.
Okay, let's do a quick explainer on that, because catechist is a term we're going to use a lot today.
Good idea.
What exactly does that job entail in this specific context?
So think of a catechist as the local boots-on-the-ground teacher of the faith.
Hmm.
In mission territories, foreign priests often oversaw massive areas with thousands of people.
So they couldn't be everywhere at once.
Exactly, they couldn't. So they relied heavily on local catechists to bridge the gap. The catechist lived in the village, taught the children, prepared people for sacraments, led prayers.
Almost like an assistant pastor.
Basically, yeah. They acted as the daily spiritual leader of the community when the ordained priest wasn't around.
Which brings us to the massive catalyst in this story, the moment everything just shatters.
Yes, 1942.
Right. World War II breaks out, and the Japanese military invades the Gazelle Peninsula.
And the occupation was incredibly swift and brutal. The Japanese authorities knew that the foreign missionaries held a lot of sway over the local population.
So they see them as a threat.
A huge threat. So they immediately rounded them all up. This included Peter's parish priest, his mentor and close confidant, Father Karl Laffer.
Oh, man.
All the priests and nuns were marched off to internment camps at Vinipop and later, Romeo.
Imagine being like the 30-year-old intern at a massive company, and overnight the entire executive board is arrested by a hostile takeover.
That's a great way to put it.
Suddenly, you're the CEO. And if you mess up, people don't just lose their jobs, they lose their lives. That's the sheer weight of the pressure Peter is suddenly operating under.
That is the exact dynamic. The entire spiritual infrastructure of the region was wiped out in a single afternoon. And this is where Peter makes his dramatic break.
But his break wasn't running away to hide in the jungle, was it?
Not at all. His break was boldly stepping into that massive void to become the absolute sole pillar of his community.
While a lot of people understandably kept their heads down in fear, Peter just assumed full responsibility for the parish.
He became their lifeline. But because he was a catechist and not an ordained priest, there were strict limits on what he could do.
Right, church rules.
Yeah, in Catholic theology, only a priest can consecrate the bread and wine to become the Eucharist, the communion host. Peter couldn't do that himself.
So how did they get communion?
He would travel on foot through enemy-occupied territory. He was sometimes walking up to 6 hours just to secretly reach the internment camps.
That is incredibly dangerous.
Very. He would meet with the imprisoned priests, get the pre-consecrated hosts, and carefully smuggle them all the way back to his people.
You know, if we connect this to the bigger picture, we are looking at an exact mirror of the early Christian church.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got believers hiding in catacombs, practicing their faith in secret under the nose of the Roman Empire. Now it's the Japanese Empire, but the mechanics are identical.
Absolutely identical. I mean, he divided his parishioners into tiny, localized groups to avoid detection. They went into the forest and built a secret church out of palm branches.
What did they call it?
A nalama. And when it was too dangerous to meet there, they held their prayer meetings late at night in these dugout tunnels.
Wow.
And Peter's unique charism, his core focus as a spiritual leader, was his absolute unshakable dedication to his role as a catechist, and specifically his fierce defense of the sacrament of marriage.
Which makes total sense because Peter was a married man himself. He married Paula Aya Varpit in 1936. And I love the cultural details we have about their wedding in the sources. His family paid a traditional bride price of 50 coils of mussel shells.
It grounds the story beautifully, doesn't it? It's so specific. They had a profoundly loving relationship, too. They prayed together, worked the land together, and eventually had 3 children.
So he wasn't just lecturing his community, he was actually leading by the example of his own family life.
Exactly. But that family life is about to become the exact battleground for his biggest conflict with the occupying forces.
Right.
Initially, the Japanese issued a partial ban on religion, basically telling Peter to keep the gatherings small. But soon they escalated it to a total ban. Absolutely no religious gatherings.
Yet Peter kept operating the underground church.
He did.
But the real friction, the powder keg, really ignites in 1944.
Yes.
Wait, I want to clarify something here, because reading the sources, I was a bit confused at first. The Japanese authorities decide to legalize and actively encourage polygamy among the local men. They tell the tribal chiefs they can take second wives.
That's right.
But they are in the middle of a brutal global war. Why on earth does the Japanese military suddenly care about local marriage customs? That seems like a really bizarre priority.
It seems bizarre until you look at the psychology of social control.
Okay, lay it on me.
This was a highly calculated proxy war. The Japanese military, specifically the local officer named Mishida, recognized that the Christian catechists were the glue holding the community together.
They're the moral authority.
Precisely. The Japanese realized that if they could exploit a cultural wedge, if they could legalize polygamy, which appealed to some of the local men's traditional desires,
Oh, I see.
they could pit the local men against the catechists. If the men abandoned Christian teachings to take a second wife, they were inherently rejecting the catechists' authority.
Ah, so it was a Trojan horse. Break the moral code, break the leaders, and you gain total submission from the population.
Exactly. And Peter Durrat saw right through it. He vehemently defied this policy. He knew it was a direct violation of the Christian teaching on the indissolubility of marriage, the idea that a valid marriage is a lifelong, unbreakable bond.
Right.
And he didn't just preach against this policy in the abstract. He had to confront it in his own family.
This is one of the most intense moments in his life. His own elder brother, Joseph Tatamai, decides to take advantage of this new Japanese law and takes a second wife, a woman named Iatia.
Yeah, and in Tolai culture, being the younger brother means you're supposed to remain silent and defer to your elder sibling.
Right, it's a huge respect thing.
Huge. It's a massive taboo to publicly disrespect your older brother. But Peter refused to look the other way. He confronted Joseph and actually kicked his own brother off their shared family farmstead.
Man, that takes guts.
He told him, if you do not leave her, then you must leave our community.
That is the ultimate test of integrity, isn't it? I mean, it's one thing to stand up to a faceless empire. It's another thing entirely to draw a hard line with your own flesh and blood.
It really is. His brother actually relented after a week and came back to apologize. But that confrontation showed the entire village that Peter would not compromise.
For anybody.
Exactly. And it wasn't just his brother. There was a married Catholic woman named Ia Mentel. A native police spy, a man named Tamedepa, decided he wanted to take her as his second wife.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Peter directly intervened, shielded the woman, and convinced her to stay with her legitimate husband.
Which put a massive target on Peter's back. Because Tamedepa wasn't just a local guy, he was a literal spy for the Japanese.
Right.
So now Peter has made a very bitter, very dangerous enemy.
Tamedepa started looking for any excuse to destroy Peter. He reported him to the Japanese command, highlighting that Peter was the biggest obstacle to their cultural takeover.
He was the one keeping the people loyal to a higher law rather than the occupying army's law.
So the military decides he has to go. They arrest him in spring of 1945.
What was the official charge?
They used his secret prayer meetings and a series of clandestine weddings he performed as the official excuse for his arrest. Officer Mishida sentences him to 2 months in the Vinayara prison camp.
Which brings us to the final months of his life and an entirely different kind of strength. You know, when we read about saints or historical martyrs, we often expect these wild, supernatural phenomena.
Right, like levitating or bearing the stigmata.
Exactly, or surviving being thrown into a fire. There's none of that here. But to me, real mysticism isn't always glowing halos and floating in the air.
No, it's not.
Sometimes the most surreal supernatural thing in the world is the absolute psychological peace of a man staring down his own executioners without blinking.
That's a really beautiful way to frame it. Because his behavior inside that prison camp was extraordinary. He was treated with extreme cruelty, far worse than the other prisoners.
They really singled him out.
They did. He was kept in solitary confinement in this tiny, suffocating underground room. Yet eyewitnesses inside the camp noted that he remained entirely joyful.
There's a heartbreaking moment when his sister, Teresa, comes to visit him. She sees him shivering by a fire, looking malnourished, and she just breaks down weeping.
It's devastating.
And Peter looks at her and says, "Stop crying. Pray. I'm quite happy about it, for I am here on account of my faith."
What's fascinating here is how Peter possessed this crystal-clear premonition of his own death. He knew exactly how this was going to end.
He wasn't naive about it at all.
Not at all. Toward the end of his 2-month sentence, the Japanese authorities told him that a doctor was coming to the camp to give him medicine. Now, Peter wasn't terribly sick. He had a slight cold, but nothing that required a special doctor visit.
He immediately knew the medicine was a lie. He told his visiting family members, "They have already condemned me to death."
His young wife, Paula, came to visit him for the last time. She was heavily pregnant with their 3rd child, and she brought their 2 other children along.
Oh, that is just gut-wrenching.
She was utterly terrified. She begged him to just quit. She told him to renounce his role as a catechist, tell the Japanese he was done with the church, and just come home to his family.
The human heartbreak in that moment is almost too much to think about. He's looking at his pregnant wife and his kids, and he knows he can stop all this if he just compromises.
But he gently rebukes her. He tells her, "Don't you worry about that. It is my duty to die for God the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and for my people."
Wow.
And then he just made the sign of the cross in total serenity. They sat together in silence for a long time until he told her it was time to take the children home.
That brings us to his final moments, what is often called the transitus, the specific passage from life into death for a saint.
Yes, in July of 1945.
On that final evening, Peter washed himself carefully and put on clean clothes. He sat at the entrance of his cell, deep in prayer, simply waiting for them to come.
The eyewitness accounts of the murder are chilling. After dark, the Japanese guards took all the other prisoners and sent them away to a farm.
Just to get them out of earshot.
Exactly, forcing them to sing and make noise to distract from what was about to happen. But a fellow prisoner hid on a nearby hill and watched the whole thing unfold.
Oh, so we have a direct witness.
We do. A Japanese doctor arrived with the guards. They brought Peter into the room. The doctor administered a lethal injection and forced him to drink something vile from a cup.
Ugh, that's horrific.
Then they stuffed his ears and his nostrils with cotton wool. As the poison began to shut down his nervous system and Peter started to convulse, the guards held his arms and legs down and a doctor covered his mouth, physically smothering him.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Peter died in complete silence on the floor of that cell.
The next morning, the Japanese guards put on this terrible acting performance. They threw a sheet over his body and told the local villagers, "Oh, your mission boy has been very ill, and unfortunately, he died in the night."
But the cover-up completely failed. The local community wasn't fooled for a single second.
How could they be?
Right. When the villagers brought his body back to prepare it for burial, they found the puncture mark from the injection needle on his arm. They saw that his throat had been crushed from the smothering, and they could literally smell the foul odor of poison coming from the foam in his mouth.
The whole region knew he had been murdered for his defiance.
And because of the profound nature of that sacrifice, the locals didn't bury him in his family's traditional plot. They buried him in the WWII cemetery, in the exact spot of honor that had previously been reserved solely for the ordained parish priests.
They knew what he was?
They marked his wooden cross with a simple, powerful inscription: "To rot, martyr for the faith,"
which launched a legacy that has only expanded over the decades. The timeline of his path to sainthood reflects how deeply his people revered him, right?
Oh, absolutely.
He was officially beatified in 1995 by Pope John Paul II in a massive ceremony in Port Moresby. And now, decades later, his canonization in October 2025 by Pope Leo XIV is being celebrated by thousands of Papua New Guineans who finally have their first indigenous saint officially recognized by the global church.
Oh, it's a monumental moment for them.
So what does this all mean for you, listening right now? We've been talking about the intricate politics of a remote village during a world war in 1945. Why does Peter Tarot's story matter to us today?
I think Peter represents the ultimate integrity of commitment.
Yeah.
We live in a modern world where commitments, whether they're vows of marriage, personal promises, or matters of faith, are incredibly easy to break. We compromise for convenience all the time.
We really do. It's almost expected.
But Peter stood firm for the vows of marriage and his faith, even when that stance put him in the crosshairs of a ruthless military empire. He refused the easy way of moral compromise. He wouldn't even compromise with his own brother.
He was the load-bearing pillar that refused to crack when the earthquake hit.
Exactly. And that leaves us with something really profound to chew on. The Japanese military murdered Peter in a dark, secret cell. They smothered him and stuffed cotton in his ears because they specifically wanted to silence him.
Right, they thought they could just erase his influence over the people by quietly disposing of him.
But it backfired on a spectacular scale.
Completely.
By trying to bury his voice in the dark, they inadvertently created Papua New Guinea's greatest national hero and a globally recognized saint whose story is now being told around the world.
It's amazing.
It forces us to look at our own lives and ask a difficult question. What are the quiet, uncompromising truths in our own lives that might just outlive the empires trying to silence them?
That is an incredible question to leave on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the extraordinary life of St. Peter Tarot. Keep exploring the hidden histories around you because you never know what incredible strength you might find in the dark.